All right, we're live. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Excited to have you all here with us. We've got a pretty big group. We're expecting, we had 500 or 600, no, I'm sorry, 650 registrations for this. So, really hot topic we're excited to dive into. I will be passing this off to Diana and Tyler here shortly. But my name's Colt. I run marketing here at Rev Partners. And if you're not familiar with RP, we are a elite HubSpot solutions partner with a really strong focus in revenue operations and go-to-market engineering. We were one of the first Clay enterprise partners, now a Clay studio partner. So the last year we've had a ton of fun building some really cool stuff with the Clay team and Tyler here in particular. A couple of housekeeping items. This is going to be recorded, so you will get the video recording shortly after this finishes up. That'll be a automated message that goes out to everyone here. And then it will also live on our website in perpetuity with some other really great Clay content. So I encourage you to check that out because we've done a few webinars with Clay in the past and they all live on our website there. And then questions, we're going to do our best to get to them in the chat here. But any bigger topics, we'll hold those to the end, or we'll document them and then we'll cover them at the end in our Q&A dedicated portion. And that being said, Diana, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, I am Diana from the Rep Partners team. Really excited to be here today. Colt just mentioned it, but we've had an amazing number of registration. So I'm really hoping that we can dive into what prospecting can look like in the world of AI. A little bit of background in regards to myself. I started my career over 10 years ago. I won't age myself too much in marketing. And I went into revenue operations, sales. I did a little bit of everything. And now I'm back at Ref Partners building what we call AllBound, which is specifically orchestrating inbound and outbound activities through HubSpot and Clay. So you guys can expect a lot of HubSpot talk today as it pertains to the CRM itself. And then obviously Clay, which is the way in which we're enabling AI for prospecting. Tyler, you want to do a little bit of an intro on your end?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks everyone for attending. My name is Tyler. I'm a go-to-market engineer here at Clay. My background started in consulting, and then I moved over into the startup space, where I joined an HR tech startup, scaled from about 300 people to about 1,250 people in three years' time. Spent a lot of my time doing a lot of go-to-market for our new tech product there, really learning about how do you bring a product to market, how do you target the right people at the right time. Ultimately joined Clay about 6 months ago. Now I act as sort of a go-to-market consultant, doing a lot of like co-optimizing, sort of co-designing of my clients' clients' go-to-market motion. I work really closely with the Rev Partners team. And so really excited to talk to you today about how Clay can really fuel a lot of the workflows that Rev Partners team has designed here, and really weaving AI into a lot of the tasks that your sales and marketing teams are doing today.
Great stuff. All right. Colt, do we have a poll to go through now?
Yeah, we do. Is it showing up on the stage for you
Yep.
guys? Yeah, cool. Yeah, would love to know who's excited about event season, who's going to Inbound, who's going to Sculpt. We will be at both. We're really excited, and we've actually got some fun events at both. So if you are going, I would love to invite you to some of the things we're doing. We've got a food tour in San Francisco the night before Sculpt, workout event at Inbound both days. So it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, let us know if you guys are going, and would also love to hear a little bit more of where you all are tuning in from. I see actually a few a few folks from San Francisco. And we just got a note that they actually don't see the poll. So
Okay, technical difficulties. Well, I will come
as
back and
always.
do that. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started, and I will figure out how to get that poll back up in just a minute.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, without any further ado, let's go ahead and kick it off. Just to set the agenda here for you guys, we are going to be talking about the idea of assisted prospecting. What does it mean? Why do we really think through assisted prospecting in this new age of AI? The all-bound orchestration. So, what does it mean when it comes to like the actual framework and infrastructure that we need within your CRM to be able to enable this for your teams? Then we're going to go through using AI to automate a lot of the manual research that gets done today by business development and prospecting teams. And then we will wrap this all up in a nice little bow with an actual demo of both Clay and HubSpot and how this information can be leveraged by all of your different teams. So, really excited to get going here at the 5 minute mark. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in again. We see folks from a lot of different places, and we're really excited to dig into all of this. Remember to please add your questions into either the chat or, the chat or the Q&A feature within this tool so that we can assess them towards the end of the conversation. We will have a Q&A session. All right, assisted prospecting. Let's hit it. Okay, so this is the day in the life of a BDR today. They are juggling multiple tools, multiple things, and really it's all eating away from the actual work of creating relevant interactions with the people who care about the service or the solution that you're offering, right? And so today, in the current state of prospecting, usually a BDR would start by saying, okay, I need to figure out today who I'm going to be doing outreach to. Who else can I go after today? They start with searching for new prospects, usually companies, sometimes contacts. They're either going to an Apollo or a LinkedIn Sales Navigator or a ZoomInfo or some sort of tool to help them figure out which companies or contacts they need to go after. Then they go into, are these prospects really a good fit? So they're doing some level of enrichment somewhere, or they're going into this actual company's websites or the LinkedIn URLs of these companies, et cetera, checking news, a lot of different things to figure out if these companies or prospects are going to be a good fit for their solution. Then they go and figure out which are the right people to talk to. Again, LinkedIn, Apollo, ZoomInfo. I've worked with companies who have had BDRs use more than 10 different tools for this process. And they have, I mean, I know we all have multiple tabs open. I mean, I am the first one to admit it, but these folks are having to juggle so many different tools from where they're finding the companies, how they're going about enriching them, finding if they're strategic or if the company is running strategies aligned with your solution, and then doing the actual outreach. It can be more than 10 different tools. So let's go into the next slide to take a look at what this could look like. So future state is enabling this information through HubSpot and Clay to where a prospecting rep can go in and say, which are the target accounts that are sales ready with a predefined portfolio. And I'm going to talk about how we're fitting those companies into the CRM. Good fit companies constantly being fed to them with different levels of intent within HubSpot, being able to enrich them directly within HubSpot to understand who are the contacts, being able to do a lot of the multi-threading directly within HubSpot, and then directly from that tool also go in and attack and send the sequences or emails or interactions directly from there. So when we think about what this can look like, let's hit the next one. We're thinking that the BDR role really is changing. And I've talked about this a little bit in the past. It's going to really be a mix of SDR work where a lot of the companies are coming in directly into the system and also enabling some of the full cycle AEs to be able to do some of this work. So we're calling them actually XDRs. And I won't take the credit for that. I found it somewhere on LinkedIn, but I thought it was genius because it is not about cold outbound. It's not necessarily even about warm outbound. It's about being able to orchestrate all of the different activities of go to market in order to create relevant interactions with folks that are in the process of looking for a solution that you can serve them with. So in the old world, BDRs, prospecting teams have hours of research that they're doing. They have to do outreach based on outdated databases in a lot of cases. It's a volume driven activity. They are using multitude of tools. And there's a very reactive, very cold type of outreach. And in this new world, we are suggesting a more frictionless, automated enrichment and research, saving hundreds of hours, outreach that is based on real-time buying signals, that is conversion driven, that is done within a unified system, that is more proactive and timely. Great. So, Diana, that all sounds really great and it's an ideal world, but how do I actually get this done? Great question. I'd love to tell you. This is what we call the AllBound orchestration. So, the AllBound orchestration talks about leveraging brand interactions, intent signals, and enrichment for timely prospecting. That's really all that it is. And the premise of AllBound is that we are sending the right message to the right person at the right time. This slide might be particularly difficult to see right now, but I'll dive into a little bit of what this looks like in just a moment. If you guys see, there's different interactions happening here. So you have your website, your paid media, your organic social, and you're creating interactions at all of those different levels. We need to capture from those different interactions before form submission, before conversions, pass them through enrichment, create prompts within Clay to understand ICP and buyer persona categorization, to then be able to do proper outreach to these folks. On the other hand, we're also doing intent-based list building, where we are gathering information from folks that are already interacting at some level with, for example, Googling a particular keyword or interacting with a competitor on social media or etc., to be able to create new lists of companies and contacts that may not already be within your database. And then again, enrichment, ICP, buyer persona, and then outreach. All of this, once you start doing your list building, gets tied in with intent scoring directly within your CRM to flag these accounts again to your business development reps. And then the North Star here is going to be pipeline generation. And again, that's really high level. And so what does this actually look like in terms of what I have to build in order to get this within my CRM so that my business development reps, my prospecting teams are actually able to leverage it? Well, there's three main actions that need to be taken. The first one is going to be database enrichment. This is where we're talking about making sure that either your existing database or anything new that goes into your database has full enrichment at the company level, firmographics, contact demographics, being able to find new contacts so they're multi-threading really early on in the conversation and sending targeted messaging to each one of the different buying roles, and then automated account research. We're going to layer that with the scoring mechanism that is enabled within Clay. So AI-based mechanism that takes buyer persona information, company ICP fit, and then all of the different signals to help us understand. And this is first party and third party signals. So whether they are actually interacting with your website or if they have an external type of trigger, like a new funding that's being triggered or new hiring roles, depending on your company, all of those things are being fed into the scoring mechanism at the contact and at the company level to then create target account layers. So these target accounts are really going to be the ones that we are going to actively go after. These are companies that are just a good ICP fit based on the firmographic information that we have, that have some level of intent in terms of buying your particular product or service, or a reason or a strategy, and then the buyer persona information also being fed as part of the intent signals here. So target account management is probably going to be the most important thing here. And I'll actually go into HubSpot towards the end of this conversation to talk to you guys about what this looks like in real life. So the target account management layer speaks into having 4 different tiers. And these tiers are going to help us understand the ownership of each one of those accounts for your internal teams, so that there is no overlap between companies that are being prospected to versus marketing is currently engaging. So the first tier is going to be high intent. These high intent accounts also leverage obviously the information at the contact level, some type of behavior that the contacts themselves are doing, and feeding again all of that information based on ICP fit, buyer persona, etc. The tier one accounts are your XDR's golden goose. These are the ones, this is their portfolio. These are the ones that they need to be going after actively, heavily, and in all fronts, what we call AllBound through multi-channel outreach. So these tier one accounts are going to be assigned to the XDRs with high touch, personalized outbound sequences. We also encourage cold calling and LinkedIn interactions in this particular tier. Tier two is going to be the actual bridge between marketing and XDR work. Tier two accounts are meant to be those that are good ICP fit. There's buyer personas that are involved that like make sense and are relevant for your solution, and there is some level of intent, either first party or third party. There is something there. These are the accounts that we are sending some of the semi-automated outreach to. There might be an automated LinkedIn connection going out. There might even be an automated sequence going out for these guys. And the intention is that the XDRs here are not really spending a ton of time in regards to the outreach here itself, but more making sure that the emails are going out under their name so that if there's any reply, they're able to take care of them. They also have the possibility of going in and researching additional contacts for those accounts, making sure that all of the work that we're enabling through AI also has a set of eyes to them. And tier three is going to go into um, the marketing ownership. This is where we're doing nurturing campaigns, re-engagement, making sure that there is some level of engagement that is warming them up to eventually be a tier two and tier one. Tier four are really not going to be considered exactly target accounts. These are going to be the accounts that are really good ICP fits, and there may be potential in the future, but there's no real intent or signals happening here. And so they are under the ownership of marketing, and there's no real outbound. There may be marketing newsletters, mass emails, etc., but no real outbound going out to these folks. That's what we're doing. We'll go into a little bit of more of how this looks like within HubSpot. For now, I'll go ahead and kick it over to Tyler to talk about what this automated research looks like within Clay.
Amazing. Thanks, Diana. Cool. Really excited to kind of walk through everything Diana's talked about, how it applies to Clay, how we can really bring this to life, how you can weave AI into your sales and marketing efforts. I'm going to start and give you just a brief overview of what Clay is, how it works, where it fits into your tech stack. I know there's probably a varying level of knowledge on Clay across this call, so let's kind of start with the foundations. I'm going to jump into how you actually adopt Clay, how we see people being successful, and then really focus on what are the AI use cases that we see people be most successful and that we see be very popular among our customer base. Once we go through that, I'm actually going to jump into the tool. I'm going to show you under the hood how Clay is operating for some of these assisted prospecting workflows that Diana is going to walk through in HubSpot. So super excited for this section. Zoom out. The way I like to explain Clay to individuals is think of it in two aspects. The first being Clay is a data marketplace and Clay is an orchestration tool. On the data marketplace aspect, what you get with Clay is access to now over 150 data providers within one platform. And so typically in the old world, you'd actually have to go out and procure these different databases, go through long sales cycles, sign an annual contract, just to find out if that data is useful to you, and then create some sort of workflow under the hood on how to marry all of that data together. What we've done is we've aggregated all of these data providers into one platform and allow you to pay per data point across all of these vendors. Now, on the orchestration side, how do we actually make that happen? And how do we make sure you're not getting data from multiple places and really making sure that you're efficient and getting the best data possible? And that's where waterfall enrichments come into play in Clay. And so if you've seen this is sort of Clay's bread and butter, but effectively for any given data point you're looking to pull in Clay, you might have access to between 8 to 10 to 12 different providers to pull that data point. And so what we've done on our side is run extensive data tests to decide what data providers have the most data, the most accurate data, and who will supply it at the lowest cost. And then we stacked ranked all of those providers based on that information. And so when you're pulling information, let's say like email addresses, which is a really common data point in Clay, you'll start with the first provider in the list. If they have that data point, if they have an email, great. We'll actually validate it for you and make sure it's not an email that's going to bounce, and we'll return it in Clay. Now, if they don't have that data point, we'll actually waterfall to the next provider, so on and so forth in that list until you get a true, verified, valid data point, and you're only charged for that one that is returned successfully. I think also as we go through this, you'll notice that Clay is like a dynamic spreadsheet. I think if you built Microsoft Excel in 2025, it would look something very, very similar to Clay. It not only holds numbers, letters, text, formulas, but also the responses to all of these AI calls. And there's a lot of ways that you can take all of this data, orchestrate it in one place, and then pass it off to other systems. Now, where this really starts to get exciting is how do you leverage AI research agents for web scraping and personalization within Clay? And so what we've done is we've integrated with the top of the line LLMs, your ChatGPT, your Anthropics, your DeepSeeks, your Google Geminis, and allow you to make really targeted AI calls within Clay. Oftentimes, this is for web scraping prompts. Think about automating a lot of the work that your reps are doing that's very time consuming and bringing it back into Clay as very structured data points. The other use case for AI within Clay is creating either custom data points or drafting outbound content. So using AI to think about how do we reason, how do we use logic to actually create net new content at scale for your reps or to beef up the data that you have within your existing systems. And so here we can see where Clay fits into your overall tech stack. I had a customer tell me once that Clay is like the fulcrum of their go-to-market tech stack, which I thought was a really great analogy. As you can see here, Clay ingests data, first-party data from either your CRM, from webhooks on like an inbound form fill. You can combine it with our company people and jobs database, which we house within Clay, as well as any intent data. You combine this with the enrichments in Clay from our 150 data providers, as well as these AI enrichments. You can build out profiles of accounts, contacts, prospects, clean and restructure this data, and then ultimately send it to its end destination. Now, most often, this is HubSpot, other go-to-market tech stack tools. It might also be a sequencer for your reps if you are standing up messages for an outbound flow. It could also be a data warehouse or something as unique as Slack. So oftentimes we see people source real-time signals in Clay and then pass that on to their reps via a like Copilot or single channel where they can manage all of the information that's going on across their named accounts. Now, I often get asked, how do we implement Clay? Where do we start? How do we make sure we're successful? I always say start with the data foundations. Most companies, if you peel back the hood, there's some sort of underlying data problem within their CRM or within their systems, and Clay is very quick ROI on cleaning up that data and getting you better, accurate information across all of your accounts and contacts. So we'll typically start with the CRM enrichment engagement, set up ongoing enrichment of your accounts, sort of filling in the white space of your TAM and making sure that your research scoring model is incorporated in Clay and done at scale. Then we can move to these larger engagements like AI outbound, enriching your inbound forms, or even some more I would call high touch rep enablement. So like very custom signals and intent, true account-based marketing with Clay, or a go-to-market Copilot, which is how do you use all this information, surface it to your reps in real time and make sure they're best enabled. With that, now that we've covered the high-level use case of Clay, how it fits in, let's talk about some of these specific AI use cases. And really, all of this is plugging into this bigger idea of how do you take your best reps or your best AEs, mirror their workflows, and make sure that that is the playbook and the starting point for the rest of your sales team. And so as we go through this, start to think, maybe you have one or two people on your sales team who you know do high quality of work. How do we take those actions and bring them into Clay to up-level everybody else? So the first use case where I think it's the lowest lift with the highest ROI is just custom segmentation in Clay. So this can be done both on the account side as well as the contact side. So oftentimes when you're working with data providers, they're going to give you a standard list of, it could be 20, it could be 1,000 different industry categorizations for all of the accounts that you're prospecting into. It's not often very targeted to your business. And what we can do with Clay is feed all this first party and third party information into a very cheap LLM call and actually custom segment all of these accounts into an industry or a sub-industry list that really means the most to you and your sales teams. On the contact side, this might look like categorizing individuals into functions or seniorities or even personas like executive buyer, champion, influencer, decision maker, et cetera. So your reps are already enabled with this information and don't have to spend time doing that research. The next one is my personal favorite, which I call deep account research at scale. And the fun part about this is it looks different across every Clay customer. I really like to think of the art of the possible here and all the cool things that you can do with these web scraping agents, and bringing back information from unstructured data across the web into structured data points in Clay. And so a couple examples here that I've seen customers be very successful with that I think are really interesting and ways to get the juices flowing on how you can use Clay. This first image here on the left side, I was working with a customer who needs data on hospitals, emergency medical services, fire departments, et cetera. And one of the data points they need to source is how many hospital beds they have in their facilities. And we use Clay to actually go out, search for this information, and pull it back in as a structured data point. The second one on the bottom with the green headers is searching for financial reports for large enterprise public companies and automatically screening and scraping for any objectives or goals that they have for the year ahead. And it's a great way to take things that companies are telling you that they're trying to do for the next year, for 2026, and directly position your product offering or services to their goals. The last piece here is AI summarization of these signals that you're sourcing in Clay. So oftentimes you can enrich, you can pull lots of data points on these accounts or contacts, but how do you give it to reps or give it to AEs in a way that's easily digestible so they know exactly what's going on at the right time and they can get it in a drop of a hat? And so this could look like many different forms. It might be just an account description. So company overview, who is their C-suite? Have there been any recent leadership changes? How do they make money? And do they have any new product offerings? It might be formatted weekly news sourced from Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. These are all data points we can pull in Clay and run on a weekly basis to give reps information on what are they tweeting about? What does their social profile look like? And how are they thinking about going to market today? And so with that, let's actually start to jump into Clay and talk about some of these assisted prospecting workflows. Just high level, I'm going to go through 3 workflows today. I'm going to show you in the Clay aspect what that looks like, and then Diana is going to take over and show you actually how you can power these sort of complex workflows behind the scenes and make it easier for reps. The first workflow is going to be finding new ICP contacts, net new contacts, enriching them. Second, we'll be enriching those contacts that you already have in your CRM. And the third, we'll be doing some account enrichment. So let me share and I will take over. Amazing. Can everybody see my screen okay? Awesome. Great. So if you haven't seen Clay before, hopefully this kind of takes it back to the idea I mentioned before that is really a dynamic spreadsheet. Again, it holds formulas, texts, numbers, et cetera, but it also holds information from these API calls that you are making within the platform. And so every time you click into some of these cells, you can see that it's more than just a number or a text or domain, et cetera. There's a lot of powerful information you can store within these sheets. And so let's take this first example of we want to find new contacts and have reps source ICP contacts directly from HubSpot. What's happening on the back end is we're sending a webhook to Clay with that account name, with that account's domain, and then we're automatically running a find people search within Clay. So we're leveraging our internal database of about 60 million companies and just under 900 million people to actually source ICP level contacts based on certain parameters that you set for your reps. And so in this case, if we take the lens of, let's say, a CPQ SaaS company, we can sort for job title keywords. We can look at certain seniority levels and automatically pull individuals from these accounts and then automatically sync them back into HubSpot. So once we run that people search, we get a table like this. We can see all of those companies that we're prospecting into. We're automatically pulling individuals, and everything in these blue headers is information you actually get for free in Clay. So you can find name, title, location, the domain, and the LinkedIn profile of these individuals. Everything to the right of this are things that we're enriching and pulling additional information that might be useful to our sales and marketing teams. And so initially we can sort by buyer persona, executive buyer, decision maker, influencer, champion, and then we can start to pull their contact information. And so when I chatted earlier about waterfalls within Clay, this is tactically what that looks like. In this case, we're leveraging about 8 to 10 different providers within Clay that will give us a work email. And we can actually go through and see how these waterfalls work in real time, how we're able to source from, in this case, first provider from many of these individuals, validating this information. And for any we can't find, We're then going to waterfall down until we find a provider that can give us that email address and return it. And I think the important thing here is how you reconcile the data you're pulling in Clay with the information you already have in your CRM. And so we can build in these checkpoints to make sure that these people are net new contacts for us. We can automatically create these contact objects and then start to build in additional information on top of that. So as we're running enrichments, pulling information on, in this case, Albert, we can then sync back pretty much anything of our choosing that sits on these contact records in HubSpot. Things like name, title, their current experience, their historic experience, as well as the summary from, in this case, their LinkedIn profile. Now, where it gets interesting is how we layer in AI to this use case. And for example, what we've built is once we do research on these individuals and say we're setting up a rep for a meeting, how do we automatically prep them with AI-generated information? In this case, again, taking the stance of a CPQ company, we want to generate icebreakers, sort of poke the bear types of questions, and even ideate on potential pain points that in this case, Albert might have at his company. And so one could look like, hey, notice you have a free trial flow. Curious how you govern enterprise requests without publishing pricing. Something to kind of get the ball rolling in sales conversations. Or you could get one that's maybe a little bit closer to home. As demand grows, how do you keep approvals per deal from creeping up? And then even identifying potential other pain points to help spur conversations there. So that's the workflow for sourcing net new contacts and syncing automatically back into HubSpot. The next workflow would be, how do you enrich the contacts you already have in HubSpot? So in this case, let's say we have Steven. He's in HubSpot. We have his name, we have his email, and associated HubSpot ID. We can send that to Clay and then start to do some validation steps on the information we already have, and then fill in the additional information that we want to sync back to this record. And so in Clay, we're starting by validating this information, making sure that the information and the email we have is not going to bounce on us. And then going forward with that enriching of that profile and syncing back all of this information, again, back to HubSpot. And so you can mirror both of these workflows, both from finding new contacts, as well as enriching what you already have just from the press of a button within HubSpot. Now, the last one I'm going to show here is more on the account side, right? So as we start to build out an image of what do the accounts look like, how are we going to use this data for scoring, segmentation, prioritization, and how do we use Clay to do that? And so in this case, we're starting simply with just the name and the domain of these accounts, and what are all the other things that we can pull to build out this full profile. So the first thing we want to do is validate and verify that, again, that the information we have is correct. And you can even see here that in some of these examples, the domain we have is invalid, or it's a parked domain, meaning that domain or that website isn't in operation anymore, and likely that that company is either acquired or does not exist. And so we can structure these workflows where we're only enriching on the ones that we want to focus on. And so anything with a valid domain from here on out are the records that we're going to enrich and just focus on those high quality data points. Again, we can look up and add a checkpoint to make sure these domains and information are already existing in HubSpot. And then we can start with some of these AI workflows that I chatted about before. So AI determined industry, again, very low lift, but very high ROI for how you can immediately start weaving AI into some of your sales and marketing workflows. In this case, we have a list of about 20 or 25 different industries that mean the most to our reps and to our sales and marketing teams. And we can get very custom on how we ingest data and then categorize and classify all of these businesses. Now, if I wanted to do a sub-industry or even something like an upstream, downstream market categorization, it's just as easy as this, using our native AI models to do that classification. Now, there's plenty of workflows, plenty of integrations and enrichments that we can run in here. But again, taking the seat of a CPQ company, what means most to our reps, and how do we, again, use data points to segment and prioritize? And in this case, it might be, let's look at sales team headcounts. Let's see how big are the sales teams, how many AEs, how many SDRs do they have? Because we can use that as a proxy for how many individuals would likely be using our product if we're selling a CPQ platform. We can also look at how many CPQ users or decision makers they have, and even drill down to specific titles. And all of this is iterative. So if you find that certain data is working better than others, you can immediately come into Clay, adjust these workflows, and update in real time based on feedback that you're getting from sales and marketing teams. The next step here would be layering in technographics. So Clay has integrations with companies like HG Insights as well as BuiltWith to show you what are the CRMs that these companies are using? What's all the other relevant tech that might integrate well with our product offering and service? Are they using any competitors? And immediately be armed with that information as you go into these conversations. Now, the last one here, this one's really creative and really cool. If, again, we're a CPQ company, we're looking at how many SKUs does this company have? Are they offering base packages, free trials? How many add-ons do they have? Do they have an enterprise plan option? We can actually use AI to go out, web scrape, and bring that data back to us. Again, automating a lot of this work that reps might do today, but it might take them 10, 15, 20 minutes to do this per account. And we can do that at scale here. And so what one of these might look like is as we go into the response, we're given information like the base tiers. So we can see this company offers 15 base tiers of products as well as 3 add-ons. And that might be a signal to us that they're right for a CPQ platform or CPQ SaaS software. Now, not only do we get those data points, but we get a whole lot that accompanies it. Of course, reasoning, so we can see how these AI models got to their answers. We can see the pages that they analyzed to go through this, as well as some assumptions that they made along the way. So it's really great as a user of Clay, as you're going through and refining these prompts and these AI calls, to be able to see where is the AI going and sourcing this information? How can I refine my prompt? And how can I get really dialed to make sure all the information we're pulling is accurate and allow you to do this at scale? And then, of course, all this information, as you pull it in Clay, makes its way back into HubSpot, in this case, in the account record. And so I think that's a good jumping off point for me to jump back, pass this over to Diana, and start to show you how all of this complexity under the hood really makes its way into HubSpot, and your reps don't even have to go through and do all of these complex enrichment and workflows, but can keep it really simple and easy in the tools you already have.
Really great stuff. Thank you so much, Tyler. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and follow through on the same scenario where we're talking about a CPQ company that's finding company information and contact information. I'm going to go ahead and start screen sharing here and hope everybody can see that. Okay, so the way in which you set up target accounts directly within your HubSpot instance can vary. You can use the target account feature, you can use leads, you can use company list or company views. In this case, I'm just going to keep it really simple because I have a lot of things to go through today. So I'm going to go through a company view that has the target account layer behind it. So what you can see here is a set of companies that have been assigned to me. They are target accounts and they have different tiers directly through here. Now, the first thing to keep in mind is that this XDR role or roles that are usually prospecting, it's very common that these are entry-level positions, high rotation roles. And so one of the first things that we recommend when we're talking about standardizing this prospecting process and being able to truly leverage that AI work that you're doing with Clay is setting up some of the foundational sales enablement for them. We use what we call the RP Sidekick. This is actually enabled by a tool called Supered, which is a HubSpot sales enablement tool. That's what you're seeing here on the right-hand side. And what it allows us to do is a task level based type of assignment that also provide guidance in regards to what the BDR, XDR, whatever you want to call them, needs to do within that assignment. And you can do a lot of different things here. You can create notifications of assignments and tell them what suggested steps are, include sequences and best practices. You can also create warnings. So for example, there are warnings around SLAs if you get a reply back. If they haven't replied to that particular prospect, making sure that there's a warning. So I'm just going to quickly show you what that looks like so that you guys can see a little bit of what we're doing here. So if I get a a tier 1 assignment, the first thing is that I'm going to be able to visibly be able to tell which of those companies are directly from my view with these tags. The second thing is that all of my different tasks associated to my assignments are going to be directly here. So I can go into each one of my tier 1 assignments and I can click on play and if you guys have ever used a tool like Sequencer or Outreach.io or anything like that, it works very much the same. So you can do directly, you can start going through your tasks directly through here and have the information of the guiding rules and best practices already enabled. This is actually really powerful because, like I said, you can have links to sequences, guidance, etc. You can also put videos in here. So it's a really great way to be able to get people up to speed and decrease that ramp up time. I'm going to go ahead and X out of this for a second so that I can show you what we have going on here. There are tons happening here, but the first piece of this is that we are enabling all of that information that you just saw Tyler go through in Clay directly within a prospecting card within HubSpot. So these are custom cards from a technical standpoint. This is really not complex at all. You're really just taking the properties that you're mapping Clay into HubSpot, and then you're enabling all of that information in an organized way for your XDRs to be able to go through the info. So this is where you'd be able to see the company data, relevant signals, contacts, decision makers, etc. Let me go into a company that actually has this enabled, and I'll circle back into that one. So this is one where we did the company enrichment. You can see all of the firmographics up here. You can see the relevant signals that we decided on. So, for example, number of sales reps, number of SKUs in the world of a CPQ, it's important to know because of sales seats that you may be able to sell to this company, or like the complexity of a CPQ, right? You can also see here relevant contacts, name, email, buyer persona, job title, and even phone number if you wanted to. This is just a filter that you use based on the buyer persona or buying role property that you're going to be using synced with Clay to be able to push the information back here. You can also have separate tables to be able to know if somebody is a decision maker versus an influencer versus a champion based on your criteria. And for SaaS companies, being able to have information about platform users. So for example, your decision maker might be a CFO, but the actual platform users, if you have like a PLG motion, might give you a lot of data in regards to what the potential might be for that company. I also saw a question somewhere in here in regards to how do you leverage existing activity and information that's already within HubSpot. This is how. We're not feeding it straight into the scoring mechanism because it doesn't give you the intent signal of right now where they are in their strategy to be able to need your solution. But we are leveraging as part of the information that we're providing for the XDRs to know the context of the business. So this is where you would add your deal history. This is where you would add your previous activity to each one of the contacts, etc. We're doing the exact same thing at the contact level. And you're going to see here, again, prospecting card, completely separate from everything else. This is custom. This is where we're adding back all of the contact demographic information and the prospecting tips. So when your XDR is going through trying to figure out which sequence to use, what messaging to use, they can leverage all of this information because it is based on this person's actual interactions, LinkedIn, headlines, etc. So it's very, very relevant to them, and they can use this for their messaging. This is how we're grouping all of that information directly into HubSpot to make sure that folks have what they need to be able to operationalize that AI-based research. Now, the next thing I'll go into is the scenario in which a company is assigned to someone and hasn't been enriched yet. It happens, you go to events to get lists, you get a list from webinar that you're a partner, that you did a co-marketing activity with. So it does happen where you would get companies assigned without any information. We're enabling what we call on-demand enrichment for this. We have created a fancy app for this where I can just click start enrichment and it triggers a webhook that pushes the information into Clay. I'll go into the mechanics of this in just a second. But this actually requires an enterprise level version of HubSpot. So I'll show you the scrappy way of doing it. Basically, what we did was just create properties that would give the BDR, the XDR, the ability to request enrichment at different levels. So we have 3 different triggers based on the 3 different tables that Tyler went through. So they can request company enrichment, that's the firmographics and the relevant signals. They can request finding new contacts, and they can also request at the contact level to have a particular contact enriched. So going back here, this actually does take a few minutes. So I'll just do this and I'll circle back to it. But when I click yes, the system will automatically trigger workflows in the background to let us know what the status of each one of these enrichments are. So in progress, if it errored out or completed, and then the last date that it was enriched. And I actually have a separate forcing function or process rules, what I was showing you guys earlier, that goes into the tier assignments that prompts a person to look at what the last date of enrichment was, so that if it was less than 30 days ago, there really might not be a need for you to trigger this enrichment again. So giving it a little bit of time, it does take a few minutes to go through this. I want to show you guys what it looks like in the background. So this particular version in the background is based on lists. It's very simple architecture. So if the property of on-demand enrichment is yes, it will go ahead and add them over to this list. The list automatically triggers a webhook. I also saw a question about this somewhere. It's actually quite simple. All you have to do is, I will caveat with this with, you actually need a Clay Pro version to be able to trigger this automatically. So if you're running into issues, that might be the reason why. The Clay Pro version allows you to do webhooks and that review of the company information, or sorry, the database information back into HubSpot. And without it, really the flows are not quite complete. So if you do have that version, all you have to do is have the list membership as the trigger and then add the webhook on here. When you go to Clay and click import, there's an option for webhook. It automatically gives you this, this link. All you have to do is add it here as an action and then just tell it what information you want to push through. So that's how it works. There are also a few workflows that allow us to push information in regards to the status being in progress for all of the different ones. And it also timestamps the last enrichment date. The information in regards to the enrichment being completed will actually come back from Clay directly. So that's updated through Clay so that we know when it is actually updated. Okay, let's see if this is done. It usually takes a few minutes. It hasn't come back through yet, but you can see all of the new contacts that were created for this company, associated and fully enriched. The company firmographics still need to come through. All right, that's what we have for today. We do have quite a few questions that would love to go through. So shall we open it up to those?
Yeah, looks like we got a bunch here.
Okay. Maybe let's start from the top. And Colt, do you have like a list of the questions that you can maybe walk us through?
Yes, I do.
Great.
All right. Yeah, I've been ready for this. This one got 4 votes. I think this is a really great question. How do you balance giving a rep autonomy with building a structured ICP?
Yeah. This is oh, sorry. You want to go first?
No, please do.
Cool. I'll talk about it from the Clay side. I think what's amazing about Clay is it's entirely flexible. So you have really, you're at the driver's seat for how much you want to automate and how much you want reps to continue prospecting like they are today. Really, it's customized to each business. So really what we can do in Clay is be as wide or as narrow scoped, to example, pulling in ICP contacts into HubSpot. If you want to limit this to 2 or 3 like decision makers and executive buyers, amazing. If you want it to pull 10 to 12 different contacts, we can do that as well. One thing I see people get really creative on is specifically to outbounding, how you either fully automate this process or just tee up your reps to still have a hand in the outbound process, which is honestly most common. And so we'll use Clay to source individuals, do the enrichment, to build out this profile of people, draft outbound copy at scale, and then actually give it to your reps before sending. And so now what you've done is eliminated the manual time of researching these individuals, writing copy, but given a first draft to reps. So when they go into their platform at the beginning of the day, they have all these messages drafted, it's in their tasks, and they can go through and edit as they see fit, add a little bit more personalization, and then send out. So it's really about balancing how much are you doing in Clay and how much do you still want to keep a human in the loop. And so really at Clay, what we're trying to do is not automate the role of everybody, but just take away these processes that are time consuming and truly better fit in the hands of an operational individual so that your reps and your AEs can spend more time on the personalization and sales side.
Nailed it. I got nothing to add. Let's go to the next one.
All right. Diana, you may have touched on this briefly, but I think this is good to come back to. How do you leverage previous interactions like emails, calls, notes with prospects that are captured in HubSpot to inform future outreach?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did talk about it from the point of view that we are not currently thinking about that as intent signals necessarily. So they're not being fed back into a scoring mechanism, but they are available through their custom cards to be able to provide the information to the XDRs that are doing the prospecting in regards to previous interactions and previous relationships so that they can be leveraged in the conversation with the prospects.
Good deal. All right, this is another interesting one. Why use Clay for lead scoring and not HubSpot?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, full transparency, we've actually used both. HubSpot did get a little bit fancier with being able to create lead scoring that could just like change over time and etc. However, when you get into pieces where you are doing a lot of signal and intent, and specifically when you have a software where you are trying to measure also things that are happening within the platform, so like that PLG motion, being able to feed all of that information into the HubSpot lead scoring mechanism can get tricky and sometimes not provide the outputs that we need. And so just Clay is a lot more flexible from the point of view of what you can do from the scoring mechanism to be able to surface things in a timely manner.
Good answer. All right, how does Clay validate the email address?
This is a great question. There's a number of ways we could do it, but a lot of this is actually done via free actions in Clay. So depending on your situation, if you are a business that gets a lot of Gmail signups or spam, there's a number of ways that we can actually screen through that, and a number of steps that you can take to make sure that the people you're targeting are high value and qualified individuals. This is often actually done through free formulas in Clay. So you can actually look at, hey, we got an email. Does it have Gmail in the name? Does it have Hotmail or AOL or whatever? And make sure that if you choose, you're filtering out personal emails. And for free, we can tell you, is it personal? Is it spam? Is it a work email? And then you can only prioritize those ones that in your mind are qualified. Now, the second step to that would be, hey, now we've filtered out and we just have the work emails, which is the ones we want to prioritize. We can actually use enrichments in Clay to tell you, is that a valid work email? Is this email going to bounce? Is it from a real person? Is it a junk email? Was it just mistyped? And further allowing you to only focus on the ones that are valid, high quality leads and not waste time, not waste enrichments on those ones that may be junk or spam.
Good answer. All right, I've got several more, and then I think there's some more in the chat. So I want to make sure we get to everybody's questions here. If you sync your CRM or use a webhook and it's pulled into Clay, are all email addresses validated?
It depends. If you set up your workflow to validate every work email, then totally. But it's depending on how you configure it. So again, you can work in those steps to filter out personal emails, or even actually go from personal emails to work emails if you'd like. It's all depending on how you set up that process. But when that webhook hits, all the data that's contained in the webhook shows up in Clay. So you can break out all of those email addresses, all the other data that accompanies those data points, and then decide how you build that workflow ongoing.
Cool.
Hopefully that makes sense. Explain that.
Got another question from Barry and Diana. I think you did cover this, but just in case, where does the webhook pull data from in HubSpot? What's the trigger?
Yeah, so you actually create the trigger yourself. So this is a workflow where you can have pretty much any trigger that you want. It could be a property, a set of properties, a list, whatever you want it to be. And then the webhook itself is created as an action after the trigger. That's all.
All right.
The end.
Okay, I've got a question from Amanda and then a follow-up, I think, that's connected to it. What if you have a lot of Gmail or free email providers? Does it work with those? And then Ali said similarly, if it's obvious that spam, or if it's obvious to spam, can it not validate it? I.e., don't want to pay to enrich or validate if it's obviously spam.
Yeah, definitely. So we can actually enrich from personal emails. So we do have actions in Clay that if it's not a work email, but you still want to tie it to, find someone's LinkedIn information or find their actual professional background just from a personal email, we can do that in Clay. And we have a number of providers that have both personal and work email tied to profiles. So those are actions that you can take in Clay. For the spam question, kind of similar to my previous answer, you can validate these emails and it will tell you, is it personal, is it work, is it spam, is it a highly risky email, or is it someone that you should prioritize and focus? And again, it's kind of how you stack rank those processes within your workflow.
Cool. All right, another one from Amanda. For the data that's available, like target company updates, are there notifications? Like, for example, the target account got a new CEO.
Yes. Let me, I'm actually going to steal screen really quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry, one sec. Okay, great. Here we go. So this is something Clay released a while ago and then came out with custom signals. So you'll notice if you create a free trial account or a paid account with Clay, you have access to our signals capabilities. And so there are a number of what I would call like out of the box signals, those being things like job changes or any of your champions moving roles or any of your tier one or named account companies adding new hires. So for example, if they hire a new CEO, C-suite, CTO, CRO, et cetera, we can source that in real time with Clay and then configure workflows on how you want to surface those to reps. Other ones here are things like job postings, promotions. Are there any news or fundraising signals around these companies? But then you can also create really custom and bespoke signals as well. So if you want to do things like search for mentions of your company on Reddit or look across X or Twitter, really anything across all of the enrichments in Clay, you can pull in and create custom signals that will automatically refresh in real time. And then it's very easy to configure workflows on how you surface those to individuals at your company. For example, one thing we do at Clay is we look at, do our champions move? We look at any time a new workspace is created for one of our named accounts, and a whole slew of other things. But ultimately, where this culminates is actually a Slack message to our sales team. So at Clay, all of our go-to-market engineers, including myself, have our own dedicated Slack channel where all of our information, our account research, our real-time signals are surfaced. And so anytime one of my champions moves, I get a ping in Slack when it's picked up in Clay and says, hey, Joe Smith at HubSpot.com is no longer at HubSpot, and now he's at Meta as a new position. Would you like to tee up a message to him? You should probably reach out and see if he wants to chat about Clay at Meta, things like that. So whether you're using Slack, Microsoft Teams, any other channel, as long as we can connect it via an API, there's plenty of ways that you can surface those signals in real time, regardless of what you're looking for. So capabilities are pretty endless there, really cool.
And just to add a HubSpot layer to that, usually what we're doing is we're creating a baseline of all of the different signals and how they feed into the scoring mechanism. And then we usually have 3 to maximum 5 triggers that we know are those triggers that are more like sales ready, right? So if there's a particular role that they're hiring for or funding rounds or whatever it is, those are the ones that we're going to want to make sure that if the company doesn't already exist, or if it does exist, and it's already assigned, that we flag it to those reps. And so we're using also, or starting to use the process boards for that particular instance. Before we were using tasks directly for those that we consider to be like sales triggers.
Nice. This is a good question for you, Diana. I think Parker says this is great and agree with the approach at the top of the webinar, likes the workflows and intentionality, but a thought that it seems like a lot to maintain and manage while continuously iterating, refining to stay sharp and high performing. He's curious about the time commitment and learning curve because it feels like the team would need a part-time employee or a sales ops manager dedicated to perfecting Clay.
Yeah. So I'll speak of it from like a revenue operations point of view. Look, the reality is that revenue operations is a role that just based on your HubSpot instance being used on a daily level, it's more of a product than a project. And so there is some level of maintenance that happens within your CRM anyway. And there is also this idea of a go-to-market engineer that's building things within Clay. I have worked with companies that have been like 20 different business development reps where it makes sense to have somebody full-time in-house to be able to do Clay work because there's always new things to be able to work on and explore and etc. However, you don't have to, I don't know what the right expression is for this, but like you don't have to think about the whole world, right? You can start with one use case. We have actually started building a flow that we call website visitors warm outreach. And basically what it does is it scrapes your website visitors before form submission, pushes them over to Clay, and then sends them over to HubSpot for automated outbound. And we've seen great results from that already, like people getting deals actually generated from an automated flow. So think about it from like bite sizes and what you can operationalize at every single step of the way. And eventually you can get fancier. And I do agree that this framework that we are proposing here might be for larger prospecting teams that may need a little bit more of that automated support.
Yeah, good answer. All right, Allie has a question. Is it within Clay that you set up your voice or brand company services to personalize and automate outreach?
Yeah, I'm going to steal again because I think this is really cool. So a bit of a sneak peek to Clay's roadmap. For right now, when you add AI actions in Clay, like let's say I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do a content creation or modification prompt. Currently, you would write your prompt here and I would say, create an outbound message based on, and then I would give a ton of criteria that I've pulled in Clay to help me draft these messages potentially. What you would add is the context for the system prompt. Now, this might be, hey, I am a CPQ company. I sell these types of products. This is how I want to target these types of accounts. And here's really all the information on my sales and go-to-market motion. And so you can give it all this context and content, like things like customer stories, use cases, et cetera, to leverage in this copy. And it will actually think through all the information you're giving and then use it in the copy that it's generating. So it's taking your brand voice, your materials, and all the things your sales and marketing teams have done historically and bring it into its output and final result. The other thing here is you can actually now upload content into the prompt itself. So if you have a sales deck, if you have certain web pages, or again, case studies that you want to be referenced in any of the content you're generating in Clay, this is a great way to do it at the prompt level. Now, going forward, again, a little bit of a sneak peek into where Clay is moving. Eventually, this will be at the workspace level. So think of your entire workspace and Clay instance as knowing your entire business and your motion and how you think about go-to-market. So rather than uploading documents here on a prompt level basis, it's going to be an overall umbrella onto your entire business and how your RevOps sales and marketing team targets your accounts and prospects. And Clay will already have that context as you go through and create these prompts and workflows across tables, workspaces, et cetera.
Awesome. Really looking forward to that. That's exciting. Diana, this is a good question for you. How did you configure the in progress and error workflows in HubSpot, and what were the triggers?
Sure. So the in-progress workflow is just based on the actual request being submitted. So if somebody pushes yes and it identifies that it has gone through the workflow of the list itself for the webhook, then it pushes it over to in progress. And then error and completed are coming back from Clay directly. So when it goes through the flow and it's getting updated towards the end, it will update whether it errored out for some reason. We actually haven't had that happen yet, or if it's fully completed.
Cool. Got another question from Allie. Then I know we're over time. I'll go through the chat and make sure we're not missing any. But she says, wait, this can replace manually updating a contact record when an email bounces due to them moving jobs, and it'll update that contact?
Yeah.
Yes, it can.
Yeah. So kind of going back to how we see people implement Clay. When people first onboard onto Clay, again, tackling data foundations is like square one. going through typically a larger refresh of your target accounts or the majority of your accounts and contacts, records within your CRM is typically where we start, and how our implementation teams, and I believe Rev Partners, starts a lot of these engagements, getting you better data as a foundation. Step 2 to that would be, how do you manage this ongoing? So in 6, 8, 9 months from now, the work you did with Clay previously is now no longer outdated. And a lot of that is with those job change tracking, all of these signals monitoring, which you can use out of the box in Clay. And when you notice and leverage some of these signals, you can trigger certain workflows. So again, if John Smith, who works at HubSpot, changes jobs, we can automatically kick off a workflow that marks him as inactive on that contact record in HubSpot, sources his new role, his new title, his new email, even his new phone number, and potentially even tease up a message to say, hey, John, congrats on the new role at Meta, and then automatically updates that information in your CRM. So it starts with this one-time refresh, but then also setting up the architecture so that you don't have to go do a one-time refresh again, and it's automatically kept up to date, and all of your data is good, clean, and a well-oiled machine.
Awesome. Well, I know we're 5 minutes over now. I think there's a few more questions in the chat. So I encourage everyone to connect with Diana and Tyler on LinkedIn. We'll be happy to answer any follow-up questions you guys have. This recording will go out. You'll have the slides. And I think Diana's even going to share the Clay tables we went through. But thank you for joining us. Tyler, Diana, you guys are awesome. Super eye-opening stuff. So thanks for sharing.
Thank you all for joining. Have a good one.
Thanks so much, everyone.